Okay, so we're going to try something a little bit different this time. It's obviously getting a bit battered, the stove. You can see it's various bits of clips and things holding it together, but I've set it all up at an angle, and the reason for this is because I'm trying to achieve a better viewing. So when we're looking at the fire from the front, if that's angled up, you'd actually be able to stand. I mean, if you stood back this far, which is about 6 feet, you're actually going to have a really good picture of the vortex spinning round. So we'll try it at this angle. It's just an experiment, and we'll see what happens. So we've got slightly different conditions today, and I've put a slightly different load of wood in. I've got a more substantial load. They're the full size, so I've cut them 11 inches, and just bits of 2x3 from my workshop, but they're pretty dry. And I've got a little bit of that apple wood on top. So we just lit it, it's gone straight into action, and as usual, we've got no smoke coming out, which means it's a beautiful day in Guernsey again today. We've got about 10 or 12 degrees, you know, on the 15th of February, which is great, but it's not really going to do the garden much good because we need the water. We're going to be having another drought this summer at this rate. So the fire's starting to catch now. This is quite interesting because I'm standing about 6 feet away from the fire, and for the first time I can actually see the vortex. So without crouching down, I'm standing up at full height, which is quite interesting and definitely an improvement for my mind anyhow. I think we have swayed quite a long way away from the original design and dimensions. I think the wedges underneath the afterburner are not doing it any favours, and also the wedges in the corners, I don't think that's any benefit at all either. I mean, the vortex is certainly not as attractive as it was with the smaller afterburner and without the corners. It was producing a much more spectacular vortex. So I think that's next on the agenda, is that we'll keep this box slope on its angle, and we'll revert back to the original size afterburner and see. In an attempt to force some overfueling, I've got a big stick. I've taken the front off and I'm going to give it a good stirring around, see if we can encourage some larger flames and a lot more smoke. And then further to that, I'm going to load some very dry kindling on top of that. They're like 1 by 1 11-inch long sticks, which you can see. I've put them in and there's no smoke, which is great. I mean, it was one of the initial problems I was having with the stove, was the overfueling, but it just doesn't seem to occur anymore. I mean, that is running flat out now. The vortexes are looking pretty good, to be honest with you. And yeah, and there's the proof of the pudding. There's no smoke coming out. So I think we've actually sorted that overfueling issue. Taken the 2 chimneys down, which now gives me access to the roof of the afterburner, and I'm shining my temperature gun down on top of it. Now you have to bear in mind that the Vicunite is very insulating, but it's reading 550 C. A lot of you guys have been asking for the dimensions, so I've just set them out. I've actually drawn this to scale, just it helps me to draw these sort of things. So basically we've got an 8-inch square firebox, and this is where the flames are coming up, and this is where the secondary air is coming through here, and this is the vortex chamber, and it comes back up into a top box here and exit out the chimney. Now I've set it at 5-inch, and then that goes down to 4-inch. So I'll just turn my board over. I've got a few more little diagrams here. So this is looking for a plan view, and we can see that this is quite important because when the flames come out of the vortex into our afterburner chamber, they're then going past this little 3-inch gap. I mean, it's 2 inches to the front there, but it's actual 3 inches to the glass, and this is where the flames are coming up. So put that in a different perspective. So our chamber is 12 inches deep, 8 inches high, and the vortex is traveling up through the vortex slot, spinning down here, and then they're coming up through this gap. So this gap here is the important gap, and it goes up to 2¼ inches, and we're exiting out our 5-inch outlet and this can go into 4-inch. I mean, that's how I've got it operating at the moment. So those are the basic measurements which I'm using at the moment. It might change as time goes on, but I'm still experimenting. But if anyone wants to have a go themselves, then those measurements will work.